All right.
RAZA for IFL TV in association with MTK Global. With me all the way from the United States of America, Mr. Athletic, Mr. Sauce, Mike Coppinger. Mike, how are we doing?
Doing well. Appreciate you taking some time to chat with me. And yeah, I love how you said the United States, like it's a small place. But I guess that's the way I for me, before I ever went to England, I was like, oh, London, Manchester, it's probably like 30 minutes away. And I realized it's like very far. It's like 3 hours, right? Drive.
Yeah, from London, it's about 4 hours if you stick to legal limit.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I mentioned the Sauce there. Reminds me of Jason Bourne's movies when he was known as the Sauce. I don't know if you ever saw him, The Bourne Identity, etc.
I've never seen the movies, but those are with Matt Damon.
Matt Damon, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. All right.
Watch it. He was known as the Sauce, which everybody calls you now, Mr. Sauce. Mike, before we even speak anything about boxing, over the last couple of months, it's been very, very quiet. There hasn't been much action or sport generally across the whole world. How has it affected you, this whole pandemic, the whole coronavirus that we've been in?
I mean, for probably the first month and a half, I was not that busy, which is rare for me. It was kind of nice for a little bit, and then I got really bored. So then I was like, all right, I'm ready to get back into it. And then I would say probably last month, maybe end of last month, beginning of this month, it started to get busy. And now these like last 2 weeks have been like incredibly busy. You know, now that we have fights and we have lots of news to report on, fight cancellations, planning for fights in the fall. So excited to be back in it. This has been an incredibly busy week. Seems like the fight cancellations keep on coming, and there's more drama than ever before, which I think we all love. Not the cancellations, but the drama.
Obviously, working in the media industry, I myself work in the media industry as well. We generally travel a lot, press conferences, weigh-ins, public workouts, shows all over the country. Was it mentally hard just to sit at home and like not know when the next show or the next press conference was going to be?
Definitely a bit of a break from the routine. You know, actually developing a new routine. Nice to hang out with my dog for a bit more. But other than that, I definitely missed going to the fights, going to the press conferences, the travel. I got out a little bit of this. I've been going to the boxing gym this week and, last couple of weeks. So that's been nice, change, and seeing some fighters again. So starting to feel like a bit more toward normalcy, but I definitely missed the fights in the fight weeks.
We saw Dana White go first with Combat Sport, had a couple of shows, Top Rank then went. We've got Frank Warren going, I believe, July 10th. Eddie Hearn announced today his 4 shows in consecutive weeks, starting from the 1st of August. So is it good for fighters now that there are shows and there are things to look forward to?
Yeah, it's great for the sport. It's going to be a lot better when we get the actual marquee fights back. Most of these fights in the ESPN schedule are obviously not moving the needle at all. Fights are getting a bit better next month, but 2 of those fights are already postponed. Alito Alvarez, Joe Smith Jr., and Ivan Branch, Jose Zepeda are the 2, by far, in my opinion, best fights on the ESPN slate. Those are both postponed due to injuries. And actually, I was delayed coming on with you, breaking the Zepeda-Branch postponement. So, I wonder maybe there's a lot more injuries than usual, probably because guys haven't been in shape. They're taking fights on shorter notice. That could be it. But I'm excited for when we get back into the thick of things, maybe, hopefully, in September, October, November.
Mike, in America, you have quite a few differences within promoters. You have Al, Showtime, Fox. You have Bob Arum, ESPN, Eddie Hearn, Dazn. Dazn more particularly rely on, obviously, subscribers. We saw them last year put on a couple of YouTube fights, which, according to reports, did some great numbers. Are they in a bit of a situation now with the whole network, because they certainly would have lost many subscribers?
I think they're in good shape, though. I've seen a lot of doom and gloom on social media. I think that's not reality. DAZN just spent billions, I think, on the rights to the German Football League. I'm not trying to be American here. I called it football for you guys. And DAZN has money. You don't spend this much money and think that you're going to just crush and dominate, 2 years in. This is always a long game for them. So, yeah, while they probably have lost a lot of subscribers in the meantime with no live content, I think we're going to see them bounce back quickly with Canelo Alvarez on September 12th. And they're trying to plan that fight right now, and the launch of their global app, which was supposed to go out in time for Canelo's fight with Saunders on May 2nd. Now the problem is, who's Canelo going to fight? They don't know yet.
Well, I've spoke to many individuals about that. We'll come to that in a moment. But do you feel like DAZN will put on more celebrity type, YouTube type fights to build that subscriber base again?
I sure hope not.
We know the hardcore fans weren't big fans of it.
I mean, look, I didn't mind them doing it one time. I attended the Logan Paul KSI rematch in LA, and I got so much slack for it. People saying, "Oh, how could you cover that?" Well, I live in LA. That's why. I wasn't going to go travel to cover it. But living in LA, especially with guys like Devin Haney and Billy Joe Saunders on the undercard, it was a no-brainer for me. Now, when they rolled it out 2 months later with that embarrassing Jake Paul Anthony Gibb fight, then I'm like, all right, let's not oversaturate things. Let's not get carried away. So if they're going to try to rely and lean on that, I think it's a mistake. They need to lean on high-quality, 50-50 elite matchups. That's what's going to bring them the subscribers. And we need way more of that.
Mike, when Eddie came on the scene, he was spending millions on fighters, overpaying fighters. He's come out very, very recently and said the dynamics of the purses will change. We've got a chance to almost restart and look at what we pay them, because fighters get overpaid for sometimes not great fights. Do you feel like now is the time? Do you agree with Eddie Hearn? Do you feel like now is the time that everybody can step back and look at, wait a minute, we pay fighters way too much?
I do think, look, I'm always happy when a fighter gets paid a lot. You know, it's a dangerous sport. They're getting hit in the head and they have a short window to earn top dollar. But at the same time, I think it makes it hard for the promoters to invest in the sport and make the best matchups. You're looking at fighters generally getting 85% of the revenue, if not more, especially on the elite ends. In the NFL, the NHL, the NBA, we're looking at more of a 50-50 split. And then in the UFC, it's more like 80-20 in Dana White's favor. So I think we need to get a bit more balance if we want to see the sport grow and be healthy. And I understand why the fighters wouldn't want that. I don't blame them. But the pandemic, I think, is going to naturally bring prices down. And it's also a reset and an excuse for the promoters to bring numbers down regardless. I do think we'll see that. We're going to see a lot of pushback. And maybe at first, we're not going to see the right fights because the fighters are going to say, forget it. I'd rather just make less money to fight this lesser opponent. I think it's going to take some time.
We talked about Canelo there. Obviously, September 12th is the day that looks like he's going to come back. I spoke to Jonathan Banks maybe 6-7 weeks ago, and Jonathan said to me that Triple G was not taking that fight, that third fight yet. He was going to take on the fight that he's already agreed. But he just is obviously relying on that Canelo fight and really wants that Canelo fight. But do you believe there'll be a gate by September 12th for Billy to take that fight and for that money to be available?
I think it was looking a lot better maybe even 2 weeks ago, but we've seen a big surge in cases here in the U.S. I think it's going to become difficult to rely on a gate because even if you can have a gate, then you have to plan for it. And right now it's hard to have confidence in having a substantial amount of fans at a live sporting event here. So I would say right now, no gate. And that's probably going to pull Saunders out. Saunders, you really need 8 weeks to train for a guy like Canelo or any fight, maybe even more. I think Saunders is going to be pulled out of consideration here. And I don't know where they go. Does the zone look toward a Dimitri Bivol or even a Zurdo Ramirez maybe? I think that's possible. I know Derevianchenko has been discussed. Anthony Durrell's been discussed, but that's not a viable fight in my opinion. I don't want to pay to see that. And I don't think anybody else does either. I'm not even sure the zone would approve that fight. So, it just seems like every time Canelo fights, we have this big drama, right, on who he's going to fight. And it just drags on for weeks and weeks. And yes, it's not going to be Gennady Golovkin. He's looking at fighting his mandatory Kamil Zarameta in October.
Another announcement was made a couple of weeks ago, Mike. Eddie Hearn came up on social media. Tyson Fury also on his social media both announced that they have agreed the basic split of the fight with Anthony Joshua, a simple 2-fight deal. Obviously, a lot of terms, a lot of nitty-gritty still to come to conclusion. Do you feel like that was risky to make such an announcement, considering both fighters have mandatories in front of them and rematches?
I don't think risky because I think they're trying to drum up interest now, and that's always good. Is it risky to sign anything? Yes, but they didn't sign. They didn't get that far yet. The deal is far from finalized. Like you said, the way you phrase it is right. It's a basic financial split agreement. So there's a lot of work that's going to needs to be done. Obviously, they have to win their fights, like you said, but also the broadcast rights are going to be complicated, especially in the U.S. You know, we have Fury tied to ESPN. Joshua has a first and last with Dazn. Dazn's not even in the pay-per-view business right now. These are not easy things, but it's exciting for us as fight fans that we have the potential and the possibility of the biggest fight by far in boxing, because Fury, I think, is starting to get to that global star level.
Would you say Fury is more well-known in America than Anthony Joshua?
Absolutely. Fury is the one who has the outsized personality. He fought with a big knockout victory on a fight on ESPN pay-per-view, with ESPN's social media sharing it over and over with millions. I don't think there's any question that Fury is more well-known than Joshua in the U.S.
We know the IBF and the WBO both had mandatories for Anthony Joshua. One was obviously Alexander Usyk, and the other one in Kubrat Pulev. Pulev is Joshua's next opponent sometime this year. Usyk's management have come out and said, we will fight Anthony Joshua next, or we will fight the champion next if Pulev was to be victorious. Dylan White, on the other hand, is shouting for his obviously mandatory position with the WBC. Do you see potential issues for a Joshua Fury to take place after their respective fights with these other mandatories in the way?
Not at all. These sanctioning organizations are useless for the sport. They're corrupt. They're only in it to make money, and they're going to go with the biggest fight possible. I don't see them standing in the way of a fight like Fury Joshua. I'm confident they'll just get out of the way. And I think the sooner promoters and networks can shed themselves of these sanctioning organizations, the better off they'll be. Imagine having some guy in Mexico or some guy in South America telling you what fights you can and cannot do, or some guy in the U.S. It doesn't matter where the guy is. It's just crazy. Could you imagine a guy telling Dana White what fights he isn't gonna do, and say, oh, by the way, not only am I going to tell you what fights you can and cannot do, but I want to take a couple $100,000 for the right for you to do your own fight. It's ludicrous.
Mike, is there a solution with this, with the governing body? We see the WBA have about 20,000 belts per weight division.
Roughly. Yeah.
Literally, roughly, that's right. Is there a solution? Is there anything out there? Dana White spoke to Eddie on a podcast, and he said, I've got 30 pages of information that I can give you for you to take over the sport. Dana White's spoken about himself about coming into boxing and creating his own kind of organization. Is there anything that can be done to solve this political drama?
I think it's quite simple. It's the three de facto leagues, the ones you mentioned at the top of the show, they have to all say, all right, look, we're not going to recognize the sanctioning organizations anymore. We're going to band together and we'll have one title per weight class. Maybe you do it like college football in the U.S., where you have the writers vote on the rankings, or the ATP works globally for tennis. But the system right now is completely broken. It's confusing for fans. It gets in the way of fighters making the best fights, and you're paying people for nothing. It's crazy for how much money there is, where the fighters and the promoters are fighting tooth and nail to make top dollar. You're just pissing money away to these guys, these sanctioning organizations. And if you're not going to band together and make one, I think what they should do is do the UFC model. Maybe you have the PBC titles. Maybe you have the top ranked titles. I think it's a better solution than what we have right now.
And what do you make of the Dylan White situation? He's been a mandatory for over, I've lost count of days, over 1,000 days. He put some legal action against the BBC. I believe they came out and said that winner of Wilder Fury has to fight White next, whether that be February or maybe a bit later, depending on Wilder's injury and whether he's fit and available.
I mean, it's ridiculous. What? That could be 2022, 2023 at that point. Who knows? There is no end in sight, and you just can't rely on these guys. What I think will happen is, and Bob Arum's already alluded to it, they'll just make Fury the franchise champion with that nonsense, and then Dillian White can fight some guy for a belt no one cares about. I think us as journalists have to speak out against this. It's one of the biggest issues facing our sport. There are other issues that are big too. PEDs, of course. But the sanctioning organizations have taken over for far too long, and we have to do something about it.
Would you then, if Fury was made the franchise champion and he fought Anthony Joshua for the rest of the belts, would you class that as the undisputed fight?
Absolutely.
With the franchise title?
I just think there's It's so convoluted. I hate that we even have to talk about this, right? Like we shouldn't have to be. It just clouds everything. I don't know what. Listen, I understand that the WBC in particular does do some good things for boxing with like the clean sport and all that, and that's great. But I just don't see why any of them are necessary.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mike, also you alluded to it. The PEDs. Jarrell Miller makes his return soon with Top Rank and obviously Bob Arum. Again, is that a big issue in the sport of boxing where fighters who cheat, unfortunately, don't get the punishment that they deserve?
It's a big issue for sure. I mean, Jarrell Miller didn't have a license at the time, so you couldn't be suspended. He gets a license right now. I hear Bob Bennett likes to talk tough a lot. He talked tough when he came to Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., failing a marijuana test a few years ago. Now he seems to be turning a blind eye. I'm not saying Jarrell Miller should not be allowed to fight, but there should be more scrutiny. I would like to see him say, all right, you have this conditional license maybe. You have to pass more testing. I don't know. It's another big problem. We need more uniformity in boxing, whether it's titles, PED testing, the safety protocols for head injuries.
Mike, a couple of weeks ago, I'm not sure if you saw, Devin Haney was training with Floyd Mayweather, or Floyd Mayweather was teaching and training Devin Haney in Vegas. I believe they did some stuff in LA maybe, or Miami as well. Did you see that as almost a conflict of interest, knowing that Floyd promotes Gervonta Davis, and potentially these two, Tank and Haney, could be a big clash in the near future?
If I'm Gervonta Davis, I certainly wouldn't be fond of this situation. But last I checked, Gervonta Davis doesn't have a good relationship with Floyd Mayweather or Leonard Ellerbe. So I just don't think he's on good terms with Mayweather Promotions in general. Maybe that's Mayweather's way of getting back at him. But then again, Mayweather is good friends with Haney. Maybe he's just trying to help Devin Haney out. I don't know. But you're right. It's not great optics.
You got Ryan Garcia on the other side. Should Ryan Garcia and Gervonta just swap? So Ryan goes with Floyd and Gervonta goes with Oscar. Because it seems like Ryan and Oscar, we saw, I believe it was last week, where Ryan turned out and said, I spoke to Ryan about 3 weeks ago or so, but his relationship with Oscar seems a little bit like drowning in deep waters at the moment. Yeah,
just be on the lookout. I have a big story coming next week on that Ryan Garcia situation. I think it's going to be interesting for a lot of people. Maybe your trade idea is the best way forward.
You can mention it. So make sure you quote my name in the article. Another person looking to make a return to boxing, Mike. He's another Mike, but he's Iron Mike Tyson. We've seen Evander Holyfield training with Vladimir Klitschko. What do you make of these legends that are looking at potentially coming back? We're not sure in what capacity that they're looking to come back into boxing yet.
Look, if these guys want to do a few fun exhibitions, make some money for themselves, raise some money for charity, that's all in good fun. If we're talking about these guys in legit sanctioned 10 or 12 round fights, absolutely not. I mean, I was at Mike Tyson's final fight as a fan. I think I just finished my freshman year in college. I was crushed. Mike Tyson is my absolute favorite. And I watched him lose to an absolute journeyman, Kevin McBride. So I don't see any reason. As much as I would love to envision a world where Mike Tyson's back on top, I don't see it at 53 years old.
Did you see? I'm not sure if you saw Oscar's tweet as well, where he talked about, well, he's looking to come back as well, but wait until Mike comes back to see how Mike looks before he decides.
I think this is just another example of Oscar De La Hoya needing the limelight and looking for attention. We saw Oscar do something similar when Canelo was fighting Triple G in the rematch the week of the fight. He says, "I'm running for president." Like, what?
You probably do a better job, if I'm honest.
I mean, it's hard to do a worse job.
Mike, appreciate you jumping on and giving me a little bit of your time today, my man. Stay well, stay healthy, and we'll sure catch up with you very, very soon.
All right. Thanks so much, man.
Mike Coppinger for IFL TV. Thank you very much.